Hi, I'm Carla Schaefer, Antique Speeds designer, and I'm going to show you how to make an illusion necklace. I'm going to show you how to do two types of illusion necklaces. So we'll be using two different types of beading wire. We're going to be using Soft Flex 925 Flex. This is a sterling silver wire, beading wire coated in nylon. And we're also going to be using Supplemax. I'm using the .012. And a variety of beads that we'll be using for the illusion necklace with the Supplemax. I'm going to be using multicolored pearls in 3 different sizes, and the one that with the Extreme 925 Flex wire, we're going to be using Swarovski crystals and a Swarovski pendant. The tools that we'll be using for both of these projects, and then a few extras for one of the other projects, you'll need to use a pair of chain nose pliers for crimping, and round nose pliers, and a nipper tool. And also I'm going to be using the magical crimp forming tool on one of the necklaces. The first illusion necklace I'm going to demonstrate is again using the sterling silver wire 925 Flex by Soft Flex, and I love this wire. It's really pretty. It is sterling silver coated in nylon, so it has a really nice sheen, and it's great for when you're doing illusion necklaces and you want the wire exposed to really show. So the first thing you want to do on this is measure the wire and cut it to the length that you would like to work with. Now we're going to be working with clamshells to end, so you don't need to really add a lot of extra length. And if you want a 16-inch necklace, you do need to realize that the clamshell and the clasp that you add are going to add to that. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it right at the 16-inch, knowing that the clasp and the clamshells are going to add a little length to it. And the first thing we're going to do after we cut the wire is I'm going to prep the pendant, and I'm going to use an eye pin to hang this Swarovski pendant from. And then I'm going to drop some beads on the eye pin before I wrap my loop. And this will be the center of the necklace. So then what we're going to do is we're going to make a loop with our round nose pliers. And then trim the excess wire with the nipper tool. And then I'll be able to use this as my pendant. And since I need it to make it hang the correct way on the wire, I just need to adjust my loop. See, it's running the wrong way. So we're just going to grab the loop on the bottom and then grab the loop at the top, and I'm going to make the adjustment so I can get this to go when I string it on the wire, that it'll be the right way. So first thing I'm going to do is string the pendant on and center it in my wire. And then all I'm going to do is work a pattern from one side to the other, and we're going to put all the beads on the wire before we crimp so that we make sure we have it centered correctly. So then the only thing I'm going to do is just work out a pattern for the piece, which I'm using a helix in mint alabaster, an 8mm helix, and then I'm also using 5mm round crystal AB, and also the mint alabaster rondelles in 6mm, and this is what I'm going to use to make my necklace. And I actually did have some bicones in mint alabaster as well. You can do any kind of pattern that you would like. This is just kind of what I had done. And I've got one side completed, and so now I'm just going to work the same pattern to the other on the other side. And for this necklace, since the wire is a big part of the design, and I'm going to use the magical crimp forming tool to make the crimp so that it looks more like a 2mm bead on the end when it finishes, and it's not, won't be so unattractive as just flat crimping. But when you flat crimp using the 1x1s, it doesn't really show that much, but you can't use those little bitty tiny crimp beads on this wire, so I'm using 2x2 crimps. So I'm going to drop the last bead. This is my pattern, and then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add to each side a 2x2 crimp bead tube. And I want to make sure that everything is centered where I want it. I'm making my ends are even. If there's a slight bit of difference, it's not going to be hard to trim it up a little bit. As I said, you're going to add a little length with the clamshell, and I'm also going to be adding some extension chain. So the first thing I'm going to do is this one end. I'm just going to crimp one end, and I'm going to use the magical crimp forming tool, and I'm going to, the first time you squash it, it makes a little ravioli is what they call it, and each 4 corners is crimped, and then you just put it in there again, and it's loose because it's usually your doubling wire when you crimp, and it's not, you just kind of have to grab it, whoops, and I think I just, yeah, I'm okay. Just try to keep everything even until you get it squashed a couple of times, and then it'll catch. And I'm using the smaller tool for this reason. This is the tool for the 0.014 and the 0.015, and because it's only a single strand, now that I've got it on there, it looks like a round bead, and then I'm going to crimp the other end. Now for the other side, we're going to do the same thing. The side's going to be a little easier because now that the other bead is caught, you have a little more tension here. So then all we're going to do again is we're going to place the crimp bead in the tool, and we're going to get the little ravioli shape, and then you put it in again. And you just rotate around until that bead becomes, that crimp bead becomes round. And now we have our beads stopped there in the middle by each crimp bead, and then to end the necklace we're going to use clamshells. Alright, I did want to just check and make sure that my wire was even at the end, and I think I'm just a little bit off, just barely off, and I'm just going to trim a little bit of one of the wires. What you do for a clamshell to complete this necklace is you are going to slide a clamshell on one end of the wire. Then we're going to put on another 2x2 crimp bead. And then what I'm going to do is take my chain nose pliers, and I want to crimp this bead as close to the end of the wire as I can get it. I'm just going to flat crimp. So I got it on there. And then I'm going to slide the clamshell up over that flat crimp bead, and then I'm going to close the clamshell. And then you would repeat for the other side, and then you can add a trigger clasp to one end on the little hook of the clamshell, and then you just close it. And then I'm going to add a little chain for an extension. Again, you just add one of the links onto the hook, and then close